face with my hands and lay down flat on the grass, and I stayed there for 2 hours without moving, whispering to myself delicious, terrible things, and saying some words over and over again. It was all true and wonderful and splendid. And when I remembered the story I knew and thought of what I had really seen, I got hot and I got cold, and the air seemed full of scent and flowers and singing. And first I wanted to make a little clay man like the one Nurse had made so long ago. And I had to invent plans and stratagems, and to look about, and to think of things beforehand, because nobody must dream of anything that I was doing or going to do. And I was too old to carry clay about in a tin bucket. At last I thought of a plan, and I brought the wet clay to the break and did everything that Nurse had done, only I made a much finer image than the one she had made. And when it was finished, I did everything that I could imagine, and much more than she did, because it was the likeness of something far better. And a few days later, when I had done my lessons early, I went for the second time by the way of the little brook that had led me into a strange country. And I followed the brook, and went through the bushes, and beneath the low branches of trees, and up thorny thickets on the hill, and by dark woods full of creeping thorns, a long, long way. Then I crept through the dark tunnel where the brook had been, and the ground was stony, till at last I came to the thicket that climbed up the hill, and though the leaves were coming out upon the trees, everything looked almost as black as it was on the first day that I went there. And the thicket was just the same, and I went up slowly till I came out on the big bare hill, and began to walk among the wonderful rocks. I saw the terrible Voor again on everything, for though the sky was brighter, the ring of wild hills all around was still dark, and the hanging woods looked dark and dreadful, and the strange rocks were as gray as ever. And when I looked down on them, from the great mound, sitting on the stone, I saw all their amazing circles and rounds within rounds, and I had to sit quite still and watch them as they began to turn about me, and each stone danced in its place, and they seemed to go round and round in a great whirl, as if one were in the middle of all the stars and heard them rushing through the air. So I went down among the rocks to dance with them and to sing extraordinary songs, and I went down through the other thicket and drank from the bright stream in the close and secret valley, putting my lips down to the bubbling water. And then I went on till I came to the deep brimming well among the glittering moss, and I sat down. I looked before me into the secret darkness of the valley, and behind me was the great high wall of grass, and all around me there were the hanging woods that made the valley such a secret place. I knew there was nobody here at all besides me, and that no one could see me. So I took off my boots and stockings and let my feet down into the water, saying the words that I knew. It was not cold at all, as I expected, but warm and very pleasant, and when my feet were in it I felt as if they were in silk, or as if the nymph were kissing them. So when I had done, I said the other words and made the signs, and then I dried my feet with a towel I had brought on purpose, and put on my stockings and boots. Then I climbed up the steep wall, and went into the place where there were the hollows, and the two beautiful mounds, and the round ridges of land, and all the strange shapes. I did not go down into the hollow this time, but I turned at the end, and made out the figures quite plainly, as it was lighter, and I had remembered the story I had quite forgotten before, and in the story the two figures are called Adam and Eve, and only those who know the story understand what they mean. So I went on till I came to the secret wood which must not be described, and I crept into it by the way I had found. And when I had gone about half-way I stopped and looked round and got ready, and I bound the handkerchief tightly round my eyes, and made quite sure that I could not see at all, not a twig, nor the end of a leaf, nor the light of the sky, as it was an old red silk handkerchief with large yellow spots that went round twice and covered my eyes, so that I could see nothing. Then I began to go on, step by step, very slowly. My heart beat faster and faster, and something rose in my throat that choked me and made me want to cry out, but I shut my lips and went on. Boughs caught in my hair as I went, and great thorns tore me, but I went on to the end of the path. Then I stopped, and held up my arms and bowed, and I went round the first time, feeling with my hands, and there was nothing. I went round the second time, feeling with my hands, and there was nothing. Then I went round the third time, feeling with my hands, and the story was all true. And I wished that the years were gone by, and that I had not so long a time to wait before I was happy for ever and ever. Nurse must have been a prophet like those we read of in the Bible. Everything that she said began to come true, and since then other things that she told me of have happened. That was how I came to know that her stories were true, and that I had not made up the secret myself out of my own head. But there was another thing that happened that day. I went a second time to the secret place. It was at the deep brimming well, and when I was standing on the moss I bent over and looked in, and then I knew who the white lady was that I had seen come out of the water in the wood long ago when I was quite little. And I trembled all over, because that told me other things. Then I remembered how, some time after I had seen the white people in the wood, Nurse asked me more about them, and I told her all over again, and she listened, and said nothing for a long, long time. And at last she said, "You will see her again." So I understood what had happened and what was to happen. And I understood about the nymphs, how I might meet them in all kinds of places, and they would always help me, and I must always look for them, and find them in all sorts of strange shapes and appearances. And without the nymphs I could never have found the secret, and without them none of the other things could happen. Nurse had told me all about them long ago, but she called them by another name, and I did not know what she meant, or what her tales of them were about, only that they were very queer. And there were two kinds, the bright and the dark, and both were very lovely and very wonderful, and some people saw only one kind, and some only the other, but some saw them both. But usually the dark appeared first, and the bright ones afterwards. And there were extraordinary tales about them. It was a day or two after I had come home from the secret place that I first really knew the nymphs. Nurse had shown me how to call them, and I had tried, but I did not know what she meant, and so I thought it was all nonsense. But I made up my mind I would try again. So I went to the wood where the pool was, where I saw the white people, and I tried again. The dark nymph, Alana, came, and she turned the pool of water into a pool of fire. Epilogue. "That's a very queer story," said Cotgrave, handing back the green book to the recluse, Ambrose. "I see the drift of a good deal, but there are many things I do not grasp at all. On the last page, for example, what does she mean by nymphs?" "Well, I think there are references throughout the manuscript to certain processes which have been handed down by tradition from age to age. Some of these processes are just beginning to come within the purview of science, which has arrived at them, or rather at the steps which lead to them, by quite different paths. I have interpreted the reference to nymphs as a reference to one of these processes." "And you believe that there are such things?" "Oh, I think so. Yes, I believe I could give you convincing evidence on that point." "I'm afraid you've neglected the study of alchemy?" "It is a pity, for the symbolism, at all events, is very beautiful. And moreover, if you were acquainted with certain books on the subject, I could recall to your mind phrases which might explain a good deal in the manuscript which you have been reading." "Yes, but I want to know whether you seriously think that there is any foundation of fact behind these fancies. Is it not all a department of